Just make sure it's off. Okay, everybody, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, good. All right, so obviously we are getting started here. Thank you all for being right on time. God bless you all. You all get a gold star on your forehead. All right. So we're just gonna generally wait about 10 or 15 minutes to let more people trickle in. But as we're beginning, I just want to know, is anybody here an officer that can identify themselves as an officer right now, please? And if you can't speak or anything, if you want to, if you know how to use the the hand thing, if you know how to use the hand thing where you like raise your hand, if anybody can identify as an officer right now, that would be great. We're waiting as more people come in. Never fails. Somebody calls me while I'm doing what I'm doing. Hey, peace, brother. All right, we're doing right now. I just started the talking to the police community meeting thing. Yep. And any cops you know that you might want to, refer this way, boom, boom, boom. But yeah, I'm gonna holler back at you after this. If you don't, and if you want to get on, please. All right, brother. Peace. All right. Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
Okay.
All right. So please, once again, can anybody already on here identify themselves as an officer? Is anybody here an officer? Okay. So I invited a bunch of people. I hope some people come, because if the officers don't come, then it don't really make sense. Let me call one of them right now and see if he's intending to come on while we're all waiting. Pardon me, I'm gonna mute this right quick. All right. But anybody out there that can please identify themselves as an officer, please either do so or put it in the chat, or raise your hand, or you can verbalize it, or what have you. Please identify yourself as an officer, because of course we can't have a session called talking to the police and there ain't no police. That don't make no damn sense. All right. So let me put this on mute right quick here as I call one of the officers I know. Hold on. All right, we're gonna have at least one coming in on here. I really do hope more folks come in. I really do. Let me send this invite. And for y'all too, who are here now too, any of y'all who know police, you know, please send a link to them right now too on Facebook or whatever. Spread it out, because once again, this is not going to necessarily work or what have you without all of us in the mix. All right, so if y'all could take a moment to Facebook it or whatever, invite some cops, you know, obviously cops too, hopefully with some sense. I don't want Officer Donald Trump in here. You know, you know what I mean? All right, I'm trying to send this doggone thing. I'm sorry, y'all. I have to concentrate. Sorry. Yeah, it's right now at 6:06, so we're still waiting on more folks to come on in. As I said, please spread the word. Anybody on here yet who wants to identify themselves as an officer, that would be great. If we already, oh, there we go. Boom. All right, there we go. All right, we got Kenny Grubbs in the house coming in right now. So good. We got him, and we got somebody else coming in a minute. I'm trying to get the doggone description. I'm so horrible. I'm really turning into an old man, y'all. You don't know. All my computer skills are leaving me. Okay, here we go. All right, peace. Okay, great. All right, so that message is going out. All right, so there should be some more folks coming in. Bang, bang. It's now 6:08. Officer Kenny Grubbs, I saw that you came in here, so if you could, let me just, because now we got a lot of people in. We got a lot of people in here. All right. Well, Officer Grubbs, if you in there, I saw you join, but if you're in there, if you could just introduce yourself to the folks, if you don't mind. I hope you're not, you know, you don't want to just remain silent, because we want to hear from you. Hopefully Larry Ellison is calling in, for, former president of Mamleo.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. This is Officer Kenny Grubbs, Boston Police, assigned to the community, Bureau of Community Engagement, 34 years of the department. And I'm glad to be here with this conversation.
Thank you, sir. And not for nothing too, I sent the invitation as well to Nora. Hopefully, I mean, I know she got it. I sent it right to her email, but I don't know if she has time to participate as well. But maybe as well, if you wouldn't mind, sir, I've been asking other people too, if you wouldn't mind to also maybe text a couple of other officers you know, and just say, hey, this is happening right now. Would y'all join in? I know we got you, and it looks like Larry is joining now.
Yes, sir.
There we go. Beautiful. All right. So, Larry, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself to the people as well.
Sure. Good evening, folks. Jamal, first I want to thank you for hosting. My name is Larry Ellison. For those of you who don't know me, I am the former president of MAMLEO, the Massachusetts Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers. I grew up in the Roxbury community, and it's always been my goal to try to make sure that we keep that and maintain that cooperation and that working relationship with the community. So again, I'm glad to be here, and hopefully I can be of some assistance.
Absolutely. Thank you. So so Larry and Kenny, I'm gonna say the same thing. Anybody else that you could think of, if you could text them and let them know that this is going on, anybody else that you think, you know, could add on to this conversation, that would be great. And I'm letting more and more people in. And while we do that, let me give you a little introduction to while we're still waiting, because it's only 6:10. So, first of all, in my career as an activist and all this, and, you know, being a Black nationalist and a Pan-Africanist and being the former National Minister of Information of the New Black Panther Party and all this type of stuff, I have in my day been called a cop hater, right? But my view is a lot broader than that. That's too simplistic of a view, right? I'm not a cop hater, right? I recognize problems with the quote unquote, policing as an institution, right? But I am one of those people who understands it's not individuals, right? There's an infrastructure, there's a culture, right? And there are individuals who are good, there are individuals who are bad. That's just logical, straight down the middle, common sense. Now, as a citizen as well, I am a person, I want good police. I want better police. It does not behoove me to have horrible police or bad police. So once again, I'm not a cop hater. I want to see cops be greater, right? As an activist who has had to deal with police reform, I would like nothing more than to retire. I wish I didn't have to deal with any issues of policing. I want a police force that is truly meets up to what it's supposed to be. Servants of the public. They are public servants. We is the public. Hey, right? The old motto that we hear, to protect and serve. Serve who? The public. We is the public. The taxpayers, the citizens, the civilians, the residents. So once we get back to that model, people are talking about defunding and all that. Once we get to a model that is more closely to actual public servants, we'll be in a better place. And what I want to say is this. The reason that I'm doing this conversation, and me being the wise guy I am, growing up, people be like, hey, you talking to the police? The whole snitching thing, or you being a police informant or whatever. So I wanted to play off of that verbiage, because right now, as the country is going through all this stuff, people have been saying, what about the police? What about the police? So that's why it's important for us to have a conversation with particularly our Black and Latino officers and whatnot, because they got nieces and nephews and sons and daughters and grandchildren too. They don't live up on some house on the hill. They from our own community. They aunties still here, they cousins and them, all that. So what we have to do is understand that these people have the same problems that we do, the same fears. If they are not in their uniform and they get pulled over, their life is in jeopardy too, more so depending on where they're at, right? Even sometimes while they are in uniform or on duty, as was the case with Officer Michael Cox, who had a vicious beating at the hands of his colleagues who didn't recognize him in his undercover capacity. So on and so forth. We cannot think that Black and Latino officers are not dealing with the same racism and so on and so forth, white supremacy, that we all are. And then they get it on another level because, of course, last hired, first fired, more heavily disciplined, less likely to be promoted, all these type of issues that they have internally. And forget about it if you're also happen to be Black and Latino and a woman, right? Now you also add the sexual component in there of the old good old boys network and so on and so forth. So for a long time, particularly the Boston Police Department, in Boston, people are talking about, is Boston racist? Not only is Boston racist, this is the origins of racism. This is the epicenter. This is ground zero, 45 minutes from here, where Plymouth Rock landed on us. So clearly, if we're dealing with a force that was the first in the nation, and if folks know the history of where policing came from and the day watch and the night patrol and all this type of thing, we've all seen, or hopefully we've all seen the poster, right? Beware people of color, right? So in any event, the point now is to have a conversation with officers to know how they are feeling themselves, and to find out where we can find common ground, like what police reforms are police, like, you know what? Now that makes good sense. Like a civilian review board, or like decertification and so on and so forth. So without further ado, we got a lot of people on here now, 44 people. We know we have Officer Grubbs on here, as well as Larry Ellison. Your correct rank is detective, correct, Larry?
Yes, yes.
All right, Detective Ellison, Officer Grubbs. We at least have them, so we're gonna get started. You heard the whole introduction. I want to open the floor to you guys, and I want to ask everybody else, please mute your phones or your computers or whatever, so we can hear those folks who are speaking clearly. So please, I open the floor right now to Detective Ellison and Officer Grubbs.
Kenny, first of all, you know, Kenny and I go way back. Actually, we came on the job together as police cadets, and we're probably ending our career around the same time. Hopefully, I will be exiting shortly after 34 plus years with the Boston Police Department. You know, the last 10 years prior to this, you know, I spent my time as the president of, again, as member of the Minority Police Association. And, you know, we fight these battles from inside as well. Those who may not know, recently the mayor announced that he's going to change the way we're tested as a result to drug testing in the Boston Police Department, an issue that has been going on for quite some time. Matter of fact, most of the officers that have been disciplined, it's been over 15 years. The discipline is not meted out the same. We have a number of Black officers who have either been terminated or are sitting out right now on charges that we've seen similar ones with white officers that have been resolved. So I say this to point these things out, is that it's not much better from the inside. And I use this analogy that sometimes if people are abusing their children and you take your child to them to watch them, and, you know, they come back home and they've been, you know, you see all these bruises and you weren't saying, well, what's going on? Well, you knew ahead of time what was going on. And a lot of what is designed is to try to keep us silent from telling the public what's happening. I think one of the big shifts I've seen is those of you who've been around as long as I have or longer, and Jamal can probably contest this, is someone like a Billy Celesta, right? When, you know, he ran Area B, and folks in the community didn't really pay attention when they started to shift. That's really one of the places that impacted the communities of color. We had a deputy superintendent there, always for the longest time, that really had the oversight in our community. We don't really have that anymore. We have very few captains of color that are in charge of any station. We only have one currently down in B2, but we have problems all over the city when it comes to race. And if we don't have people that look like us in charge, things aren't going to change. But if that comes from the community demanding the change, like I tell people all the time, when I took the oath, I took the same time as Kenny did. I took an oath to the citizens, not to any elected official, and not to anyone else, the citizens of Boston. I understood that oath. So I don't change, I don't get in the wind, and I get in trouble for it, but that's okay, because I understood the oath that I took. So I'm gonna let Kenny speak, because I could go on and on.
No. Caught me off guard there, Larry. Like I said, I came on the job 34 years. My commitment is to the community, and it's a two-way street. I mean, the issues that are going on. I have my own personal feelings about what's going on, but again, it's a collective issue. It's more than just the police department. It's the politics. It's the history of policing when it first started. And again, it's a collective that we have to do it collectively. We have to do it collectively. So I'm just going to leave it on that right there.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested to hear what folks think, that they think Black officers can do differently. I know people say, well, we have a Black police commissioner. Even if we do, they can't be everywhere. What is it that you think that we should be doing differently? Because it's not as easy as sometimes people make it out to be. And that's not an excuse, that's just reality, because our power really comes from the community.
So let me say this. Here's one thing, because somebody already said, it was Latoya Gale. How can people uplift and support police officers fighting from within? And I said, we fitting to find out tonight, right? So that's one thing, because we want to be supportive to the good ones. But one of the things is we asked about, okay, and I see Arky has your hand up, I believe, or you're clapping. I can't tell what that is, but if you want to speak, we'll get to that in a minute. But one thing I believe the police can do, let me do this. often there's a trope about, you know, the community. If the community would just tell us what the crimes are, then we could get to it. You know, the whole stop snitching or don't snitch type of thing, right? But we all know that there's one group that don't snitch more than the hood, and that's the cops, right? So just like we have an anonymous tip line, right, for the hood, I would like to see, and I'm willing to create, an anonymous tip line for officers to snitch on other officers. I want to start a start snitching line, okay? I want to see black officers, literally, because y'all know the officers who were sniffing cocaine. Y'all know the officers who drunk drive everywhere they go. Y'all know the officers who beat their wife every Thursday at 7 p.m. Y'all know the officers who are sleep in the car, you know, not showing up to the shifts and all that. So, and I get it, because of the whole blue line and all that. We don't want to get you in trouble or put your life in jeopardy. I get it. So let us handle that. But just slip us the information. Tell us about Officer Sullivan and Officer McGillicuddy and them. Let us know what they doing. Hey, listen, I don't know. I heard this from a bird, but if you show up Friday at 8:30 p.m. on Blue Hill Avenue, you'll see Officer Sullivan trying to get him a hoe because he's there every weekend trying to get a hoe. Or if you know the gambling house or whatever it is, that's the type of information that we need, I believe, from cops. And much like what police ask of the community, you want us to turn in some cases, our own damn children. You want us to snitch on our high school friends, on this or that. Pookie got the gun. So I would say we want the same from you. So that's one thing we want. And then clearly support on issues that are going on, and we'll get into that more. But like a statement saying, yeah, we representing the good officers of Boston or whatever, we support civilian review. We have no problem with citizens or whatever, or decertification or whatever it is. So we'll get more into that. Anybody else has a comment or whatever before we get back to the officers? They asked a question. What do people want to see from them?
A line of communication to those whose children who have been killed by police. Since my son has been killed by police, I have not been able to have a conversation outside of the police officer friends I've already have.
Well, again,
I don't feel comfortable approaching any police officer, whether they know about my son being murdered by police or not. I just, because of what took place after the fact, I don't feel comfortable, period. And I have reached out numerous times for 7 years through community outreach, through the commissioner face-to-face, and the defenses have gone up and nobody has showed up to any event. But then I turn on the TV and I see y'all over in South Boston making sure they're okay, attending their basketball events.
Well, one of the biggest obstacles that you have, right, is that there are restraints on what officers can and cannot say as it relates to the police department, right? So there definitely has to be some changes to that, allowing us without punishment from speaking to people, our elected officials and people. Hopefully there's some type of review board where we can report this. Because a lot of times when you think about it, if you report something and nothing's going to be done with it, except you're now going to be a target for doing so, a lot of people will tend to take the silent route. And that's just being honest, you know? So, and without there being a groundswell of support from the community behind the people who are willing to speak out. I'll give you an example. You know, we've reached out numerous times, and Jamal is one of the few people that has come out in support of what we do at Mamleo, because we have been willing to call out the wrongdoings and the disparate treatment in the Boston Police Department. Not just in Boston Police Department. Mamleo represents officers of color throughout the state. And this isn't just a Boston issue. Boston, because of its notoriety, it gets more attention than some of the other departments do. But I've had officers from Randolph, Brockton, you name it, across the state who are members are going through the same thing. So it really will not work without folks in the police officers, and particularly officers of color, because that's where a lot of these issues are taking place. And us in a united front that's saying, look, if we do come forward, that the community is also what we're asking of us. that you're going to stand with us when they're coming after us for speaking out on your behalf?
No disrespect, but when my son was first killed, I called NAMELEO. I called the NAACP. I called anybody and everybody I could think about, and nobody called me back. Nobody. So when
Well,
you say lines of communication, it has to start with you guys when we're talking mothers who have lost their children, because we don't know that you are open to receive this conversation, because like I said, I've tried numerous times.
Well, I think that's the reason why we're having this dialogue now. I'm not sure how long ago. Again, my condolences on your loss of your loved one. I've been the president for the last 10 years. It's not something that I'm familiar with, that it came across my desk. But even again, and I think also it's educating people about what we can and cannot get involved with as well, right? Is that if this is an active investigation, there's very little that we can do, even as Black police officers, because of the way that the department is structured, right? We have restraints on what we can say and what we can do from active investigations, if that was the case at the time.
Okay,
That's not an excuse. That's just the policy that's in place.
let me interject here, because what has happened, and peace, Sister Carla. God, God bless you. Love you to death. So one of the things that I noticed, and this is something that needs to be addressed for officers as well, is now she said communication with people who lost their loved ones at the hands of Boston police. I'm gonna take it a step further and just say acknowledgement. So I haven't even heard the BPD even admit that yes, they've killed some people. You know what I'm saying? And not the cases where it's all fuzzy wuzzy, and because some cases, as an advocate over the years, some cases are certainly harder to defend than others. Okay, but there are cases. Her son, Burrell Ramsey, right? Which I'm sure you heard of that case, happened over there behind Copley and all this. But something like that was as simple as they said he was busting at them. But in the autopsy, no gun residue. So what are we doing? Okay. They said he shot at them, but there's no gun residue. Okay. The other case I dealt with, Mark McMullen. I'm sure you might be familiar with that one. They saw the brother on about Quincy and Blue Hill Ave. He was talking to a woman of the night, looked like, and they thinking he's either about to buy him some $20 crack rock or $20 sex, or he's going to double down and get both. All right? They put the blue lights on him. He put the pedal to the metal, left the lady of the night spinning at the window, and he dips. They chased him all the way out to Rockland, Massachusetts, where his car, was off on the side of the highway into the little, how the side of the highway got the little grass and all that.
Right, the embankment.
Right, and then they shot him to death in the car. They used the age-old cop excuse. He lunged at us with the vehicle, okay? But the shots were not in the front of the vehicle. They were all in the side of the vehicle. So little things like that. And of course, later when he was found, no weapon, no drugs. So between Carla's case with her son, Bo Ramsey, and the McMullen family's case with Mark McMullen, those are the two cases in the past that are just hands down, slam dunk, inexcusable, crazy town. And if this was Ferguson, Baltimore, Chicago, Philly, LA, anywhere where people were more awake than they are here and complacent, quite frankly, that would have blew up. Folks wouldn't be in the street talking about, Leroy Jones from Idaho. They would be talking about what happened right here. So there needs, to me at least, be an acknowledgement. And once again, I understand what y'all are contractually and legally bound to, what you can and cannot say. So this is not a thing necessarily for NAMELEO specifically, but from the BPD. And I've been trying to push Gross and the mayor on this, for them to just acknowledge that there has been death here at the hands of the BPD. And everything is not Boston strong. Some stuff is Boston wrong. We have to acknowledge that. If we don't admit it, we're screwed.
You can't fix what's broke if you don't admit something's broken.
Well, I don't want to monopolize it, so if anybody else wants to jump in, I know I saw Izzy pop in and Kenny. I'd be more than happy to speak to what you were talking about. You know, look, a lot of any type there's a death investigation that would be handled by the district attorneys. A lot of what you guys are talking about, I think there's this somehow that all of us have knowledge, firsthand knowledge of these issues, and we don't. If there is a homicide, and if you're not assigned to the homicide unit, you wouldn't have anything to do with it. You wouldn't even be able to have access to a lot of, no more than the public would, as far as information to that. You probably were going to get more assistance from the DA's office because the district attorney's office is in charge of any death investigation in Suffolk County as it relates to Boston. That would be DA Rollins' office, right? And this is not kicking the can, but that's just how it's set up. I think, again, where it goes to explain to people what we can and cannot do. So I think we need to have more conversations of what the roles are for those of us in law enforcement, so people have a better understanding and an expectation of what is realistically that we can do.
I understand, and I know that's the DA's office, but at the time, the DA was Dan Conley, who was not prosecuting police. So what do you do in that instance? Because that's my whole, that was the whole thing.
I honestly, you know, and I gotta be honest, like I said, we're having real talk here. My biggest frustration is the lack of involvement from the community. They're feeling that they're powerless, right? And I think the events of recent have shown that the community is not powerless, right? And that they can make change, right? It's just coming together to effect that change. I tell folks, if you are in this system long enough, you will get a turn, even those of us who are on the inside, right? And that's what I even said to a lot of the members when I was president. Don't think it won't happen to you, because it will. And then I get to call that it has happened to them. So we're only as strong as the community. And people say, well, how can it be? You have guns and badges. That is true. But our power really comes from you. So if we have the support from the community, when we speak out about what's wrong, I think it will encourage more people to do so.
But when you all speak out what's wrong, you're always pointing at what's wrong in the community. You're not pointing at yourself.
I have a question for Larry or
We're
Grubb.
supposed to support you when all you're doing is community, community, community. I know the community needs a lot of work, and this is the whole reason why I put my little son's tournament together, so we can start over. But for 7 years, I couldn't get a police officer to show up. So do you pick and choose what community you want to support you or you want to support? Because I haven't received any for 8 years, period.
I would love to have a conversation with you offline to see how I personally can be of support to you, because clearly this is the first time I've met you. I've heard about these instances, these cases, like I said, because it's not something I would get involved with. I know very little about them. So I'd like to speak with you about them from a point where I have a little bit more knowledge and understanding of what we're talking about. So I would extend that. Sure.
And let me say this, Cornell, right before you go. This is a common thing, because when I was working with the McMullen family, God bless them people. Them are some good people, like salt of the earth type people, right? And when I was working with them, after all these years and whatnot, you know, the mother had expressed, like, they never even got their son's property back, okay? So long story short, I was able to get their property back after 8 years.
I don't have my sons.
See what I'm saying?
I have nothing that belongs to my son.
See what I mean?
And he was so excited to get his license. I have nothing, not his camera, not his license. I have nothing of my son. Oh.
And Larry, now so
Jamal,
Larry,
so I was gonna say, Jamal, you know you've called me. I've never not responded to your call, whether we agree on the matter or not. I will at least hear you out, and that's why I said I would love to sit down with Mrs. Pollock. Is that right? Because no, I don't.
Sheffield. That's Paula Sheffield.
Miss Sheffield, and see what I can do to help you. We're not running from anything. Like I said, there are limitations as to what we can do, and maybe if I can't, to at least point you in the right direction and walk with you through this process, you know, so you don't feel like you've been abandoned through it all. And that's the most that I can do. Now, not everyone isn't going to approach it in that way, but I think, it might be helpful to you if we could do that.
And that's what I'm talking about. We all love you,
I
Carl.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hold on. Cornell had a comment, and then we'll get down to Ruby.
I just want a question for the officers that are on the line. I know Jamal made a great point about acknowledgement, and one of the main issues that's been consistent is the issue of racial profiling. There have been reports done. There's been studies. There's numbers all across the board. I'm just, that's one part of the question. But my second part is really, I want to know from you all what effects you all are seeing internally on how racial profiling is actually playing out. Because one of the main things that I noticed, one of the main things you'll notice, you may see a drug bust on the news, or you may see a huge roundup, on Fox 25, but it's always people of color. So the assumption would be that there are really not a lot of drugs in Southie. They're really not doing any drugs in East Boston. There's really no gangs, in certain parts of Dorchester. And we all know that that's just not true. So internally, how do you address that? And then secondly, how is the current climate helping or hurting you all kind of make the case for some of the reforms that you want to see happen, just to kind of make your job and your lives a little easier?
If I can chime in, Izzy Marrero, I just got in a little late, but I'm hearing Mr. Mills. The recent events, the climate right now has forced the conversation. Now, we've been having conversations. People like Larry Ellison and Tito Lozano and other officers, they've been having these conversations. They've been leading by example. It's just one or two voices. Now we're starting to have more voices join in. But the recent events definitely has guys talking. We're having direct conversations, honest conversations, very blunt conversations, to where, the conversations are really uncomfortable for the officers of color as well as the officers who are not of color. And so the conversations at the very least are being had. And so some of these individuals who, they've never been exposed to that. They've never really been exposed to that, or they don't realize that some of their views or some part of their upbringing had instilled in them any biases, because to them it was just a normal thing. So at the very least, it allowed us to have a conversation where no one's getting offended per se, really offended, to where they're now starting to understand and listen, like, okay, maybe I have some implicit bias and maybe I need to check myself. And so the conversation started. I can tell you that much. So, again, my heart goes out to Mr. Floyd's family. This conversation has far too long been put on hold, and it's happening now. And so there's a lot of us in uniform behind this badge that have been advocating for equal opportunity, equal access, advocating for the community to be part of the process, for the community to be included in the process of community policing. So we've been pretty vocal. Does it get the airplay that it should? No, but just I want you guys to understand that there's definitely officers out there like myself, Larry Ellison, Eddie Crispin, Louis Angels. I can run down the list of names who are being vocal about it.
All right. So,
Pharaoh, can I ask a question, Jamal?
Yeah, but we gotta do it in order.
All right, that's cool.
So can I just also just because I think it's important in this statement, when Cornell asked that, look, we have to sue to get information very similar to what you're talking about, racial profile and discriminatory practices within the Boston Police Department as it relates to officers of color and how they're disciplined. It is the same struggle internally as it is externally, trying to gather that data. So we know exactly, and our lawyers are suing constantly. During my tenure as president of MAMLEO, no less than 15 lawsuits that we brought against the Boston Police Department, our employer. So I say it's no easier for those of us on the inside as it is on the outside. And we do speak out about these things. But again, this is why it's important now that, yes, this is getting more attention, but we've been talking about this issue internally for quite some time.
So Larry, is it the unions? Is it the politics?
Well, look, Cornell,
where's the bottleneck at in the
look,
process?
I think one of the biggest things we went after is the Boston Police Patrolman Association, the newspaper that they had at the time. It's not as vocal. The Pax Centurion. I think there's no one probably on this line hasn't seen some of the vulgar, the racist comments that came out of their newsletter. And Mamleo took them to task for that. We were so vocal to where their sponsors were withdrawing from supporting them. So we're doing what we can, but can we do more? Absolutely. But we have to do it collectively. We can't do it in a silo. It can't be us against them, because there are a lot of good officers out there, but they're not. Look, and it's not just in one race. So let's be clear. Like, not every black police officer is a member of Mamleo. As a matter of fact, my biggest fight sometimes is with our own members, right? Until they get in trouble.
Absolutely. All right, so listen, I just want to do a little housekeeping here, just to keep it flowing and keep the order going. So Ruby is going to go, right? Then in the chat room, I see Zena Nord has had their hand icon up. So Zena, if that is real and you want to speak, you're going to go after Ruby. And then we're going to go to Arky. And then we're going to go to Caroline Darman, right? So that's what I could see. And if there's anybody I missed and I'm not seeing you, because we have 59 people on here. This is great. This is an important conversation. And not for nothing, too, all you officers, I want y'all to recognize, too, like, you know, I know nobody be listening to y'all. That's why I'm trying to have this discussion, so that we can have a real live discussion. And not for nothing, too, Carla, you know, once again, I can't tell you how much love and respect I got for you, you know, and what you've been through. And Izzy, I want you to recognize this. It's kind of what I was talking about before you got on. While we say, you know, we feel so horrible for the family of George Floyd, I want you to understand that right here in Boston, we need to feel bad and understand the tragedy that happened with Burrell, Bo Ramsey, and that's his mama right there, Carla Sheffield. You understand what I'm saying? So it ain't from some faraway land in Narnia. That shit is right here too, okay? As well as the case of Mark McMullen and others that's on the list. So God bless you. Yeah, I'll defer to you, Carla, if you want to say something.
Yeah, thank you for saying it, because, you know, everybody who has been killed by police, I go out and I support. But when I'm out there supporting and I don't hear my child's name, and then I see them doing press conference about someone in another state, that's like a punch in the gut to me. Because you still haven't acknowledged you took my son from me, from a routine traffic stop of all things. So I thank you for saying that, Jamal, because it does hurt to hear you say, rest in peace to the Floyd family. I am still grieving because I have got no justice. I have got no communication with the police. My 16-year-old daughter does not go outside. There's just been nothing from the police for my family, and we committed no crime, none whatsoever.
God bless you. God bless you. You know, anybody who's in, you know, I mean, whatever y'all can do, you know, spiritually, I don't know what you believe or whatever, but, you know, send positive energy and prayers and love to Carla. Carla has not only, you know, suffered this thing, but then if she's not a warrior black woman mama, I don't know what is, because she has not been quiet and she stayed on the grind and she has stayed in people's face to make sure this thing is not forgotten. And you mama of the year every year. You understand what I'm saying? So understand that. Love you. All right. Okay, so what was the order now? Miss Ruby, then Zena, Arky, Caroline. Let's go.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Ms. Sheffield for all you've been through and all what folks didn't do. And my absolute best wishes to you, that people come to themselves and come to you, because they lose out when they don't come to you. My exact question was about the police unions. You answered some of that by around the publication, because my question in the chat had been, the role of the union in this, both internal and external? I know in Brookline also there was a lawsuit by officers of color against the police department, and I know I don't live in Brookline, but I know people who do that came out to support the officers in that case. So I know that goes on. But I want to know what the role is beyond the publication of the unions and keeping this going within the police force and out in the streets, and what you can do, what officers of color can do to challenge the police unions. I just see it happening everywhere. That the police unions in Buffalo. I don't need to go into all of that, but what can we do? What can y'all do? I know there are some other unions, and I'm a big supporter of unions. I know there are unions considering calling out the Minneapolis and Buffalo police unions, and I know there are some unions who have called them out already. But so that's up to unions to do that. But what can we do, and what can officers of color do to change
One of
the equation?
one of the discussions that I've been having with officers of color is that, you know, the recent Supreme Court decision as it relates to you having to belong to unions. I think most folks don't realize this, that prior to that decision, whether or not you joined the union or not, they still took out pretty much the same amount of money from your check every week. And you had no say in it. And now recently it gives us a little bit more power. And folks have been having real conversations on whether or not we need to remove ourselves from a union if it's not going to represent us equally, if it's not going to represent us fairly, if it's going to support publications from the Pax Centurion that we have seen in the past, if that behavior continues. So I think there's a shift. It's like chipping away at a huge iceberg, right? You see little flakes coming off of it, right? But you have to understand, this union, this police agencies, people of color, officers of color, were not in it for a long time. And some folks still don't accept us. I think in regards, they think they have to tolerate us, right? And so it's an uphill battle even internally with us, with some of the unions, and making sure that our members, and that's what mainly is a check and balance. The officers you spoke to in Brookline, they were part of our organization, and we were there at those meetings. And I tell you what really made a difference was the community came out supporting those officers. That made a huge difference. And actually, you're right, it has to be both ways. But when we're asking the community, because we're being treated unfairly, to come out in support of us, because it's a reflection of how they're being treated, right? So if we work together on issues, right, not about race, but everyone who's impacted by what's going on in law enforcement, to come out and support the officers, it will make a huge difference. So it really is a partnership.
Okay. So now from Ruby, Zena Nord, you have your hand up. There you go.
Good evening, everyone. I greet you in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am a resident in the community, and I share all of your concerns. And I want to pass on a message that I read from a retired chief of police as well as deputy mayor. And what he said was, in order to fundamentally restructure police departments, the following things need to happen. We have to require higher aptitude and fitness standards for incoming recruits. We have to require regular mental health checkups to deal with the stress and the challenges of the law enforcement. We have to develop a nationwide database of all officers to prevent bad officers from jumping departments to avoid marks on their permanent record. And we have to start promoting officers to become supervisors who have multiple disciplinary complaints, and particularly to positions of first-line leaders like sergeants and lieutenants. And agreeably, rehabilitation within police unions, because their intransigence makes almost impossible to hold officers accountable for breaking the law.
Absolutely. Those are great points, and much of that has been the work that we've done up here. I know we just included mental health and and all these type of things, you know, regular checkups. I remember one time Commissioner Gross said to me, he said, you know, Jamal, after a tragedy, nobody ever checks in on us to see like how we're doing. And I try to listen when people say stuff like that. It was a valid point. So since that, I've tried to check in after some sort of craziness. Like, remember when the lady killed herself and her 2 kids? You know, jumped off of the Northeastern parking thing. You know, so I'm like, yo, I don't know who had to answer that call or whatever, but you know, these are things that this is just like being human back and forth. So absolutely, those things are in there. And what you're talking about for officers not to go from department to department, that is all part of the whole thing called decertification, which is about to go down here in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is only one of 6 states that does not have decertification, meaning if you're a lawyer and you cheat an old woman out of her will, you will get disbarred. If you are a doctor and you give somebody a bad booty injection, you'll lose your medical license. So if you're an officer and you do something that violates your oath or what have you, you can lose your license to be a law enforcement officer. So that's about to go down right now. In fact, we're having a legislative briefing about it tomorrow with the ACLU and others. And Governor Baker will hopefully be ushering this into law by executive order in the next week or so, so on and so forth. And that's one important step of many. Now, who was next up? Was it Archie?
Okay.
Yep.
What's up?
Peace.
Yeah. I wanted to make a comment and ask a question. One of the comments was, I think, to echo what everyone has said, we do need all those types of reforms, but we also need reforms in the DA's office, in the judges. We need to. It has to be a uniform, well, not really attack, but a conscious effort to reform all of that, because you can reform the police, but once they get to the court system, the judge and the DA can do what they want with them. You know what I'm saying?
Good. No, I think that's a very valid point what you're making there as far as the DA's office, right? I think one of the things that we need to do is looking, honestly, people need to make a living as well when they're working in there. And if you go and look at what a district attorney, an assistant, not the DA herself, but what the assistant DAs make, most of them would probably be able to apply for some type of public assistance, right? So you're not, with the cost of living in Boston, Suffolk County specifically,
right,
it's very difficult to attract people there if you're not going to pay them a living wage where they can actually take care of their families, right? So you have a more diverse district attorney's office, but you're also attracting people who are going to be invested in staying there and growing in the DA's office, rather than people who are just passing through there so they can add it to their resume. Because once they get good at it, they're out the door. And I can't blame them, because I think it's somewhere around 40,000 or less that a DA is making. Most of them are working multiple jobs. So we've got to stop looking at these, and even the public defenders. I mean, what they get, I mean, people expect them to be going in, and they should, but I mean, at some point it starts costing them money to defend you, right? So a lot of them are meeting their clients in the hallway the first time, the day that it's going to trial, or it's going to be, the case is going to be looked at. So we have to, on the front end, look at how we better attract people to these professions who are going to be there for the long haul.
Yeah, and I think the community needs to get a little more education about all of that as well, because that's good information you just shared. But I was really basing it on, I heard this absurd statistics about plea bargains and how they went up 200% since like 2000. And not just Boston, but it was talking about the country. So I'm like, you can't just reform the police for changes to happen. It has to be the whole system. The whole system has to be overturned.
So of course, I agree with that wholeheartedly. You know, as a you know, I've been active in the whole criminal justice reform thing for a minute. You mentioned a lot of people, of course. Let's add correction officers in that too, right? Because they're some of the dirtiest. But you know, we have to you know, we have to, we really have to compartmentalize it, and we have to take them on one at a time, because it's you know, it's a 10-headed beast, right? But we have to focus on things, and right now the iron is hot on policing. So any police reforms we can get down, we have to. But also too, I want to note this: things that we've talked about, like wrongful incarceration, wrongful imprisonment, right? Every wrongful incarceration starts with a wrongful arrest. So I get your point why we have to do overwhelming stuff, but a lot of this really begins from the very first point of original contact with police. That's what initiates the whole chain of events. That's how you get to court. That's how you get arraigned. All of that. So it begins really there. So I do want to focus on that, particularly because this forum is, of course, talking to the police. We're not talking to the DA. We're not talking to the sheriff. We're not, you know, so we got to keep some level of focus. So I just want to keep it moving. If anybody else has a response to that before we go to Izzy, want to respond to that before we go to Caroline? Yes.
So I agree. We as a community got to focus on one thing and approach that. Let's have a list of things we want to address, and let's go after that one thing. Put our energy. Once we succeed there, let's go on to the next step. One of the things that I try to advocate and I try to educate people on is that a lot of times we tend to. I'm hearing some noise there. A lot of times.
Hold on, Izzy. Whoever is right now about to spray paint a wall and shaking up a can of spray paint, whoever is the graffiti artist,
just mute everyone,
yourself.
Jamal.
Hold on, look. Did they mute him?
No, just mute whoever's in control. Just mute everybody.
Yeah, but if okay, so I'll look. I'm gonna mute all, but then I'm gonna unmute you, Izzy. I'm gonna mute everybody.
All right.
All right, so Izzy, go ahead.
Got it. Thank you. So one of the things that I keep talking about when I used to be in a community service office and addressing the community is we have to be careful how we weaponize the police in our own community. We're quick to call 911 because the music's too loud next door, or the car's running outside for too long, or somebody's dog is barking. And then now the police is now interjected in somebody's life, you know, unnecessarily so. And so one of the things that we have to approach as a community is kind of like, hey, let's be neighborly first before we start weaponizing the police, because far too long, because we don't like somebody, we don't get along, we don't like somebody's choice of music, we're quick to call 911. So that's just one of the other things I think that as a community we can maybe, you know, low-hanging fruit easily address, and then let's start building up from there on the bullets that we want to address, and go at our elected officials, go at all the leaders of the unions, of the law enforcement agencies, the DAs, whoever, all the people that are in position of policy making and law changing. Those are people we need to go after to get real change, and we do that with our votes.
I agree. All right, Caroline, see if you can unmute yourself.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everyone here, organizers and the police. I really appreciate it. And to Miss Sheffield, I just want you to know I'm only one person, but I'm thinking about you, and I care, and I bet a lot of other people do, and that you just don't know, which is too bad. This is half question, half comment, I guess. It's sort of a thought I'm trying to figure out. I'm in Waltham, and I was at a pretty big protest, which was great, on Sunday. It was put together by Waltham Against Racism and by Young Waltham, and a former Waltham police officer, June Conway, who had served for 35 years as a police officer here, had spoken in addition to the people who were from the program organizing the event that were speaking. And she had, she pointed out what it was like to be an African-American woman police officer. And she said that, she believes Black Lives Matter, and she has a blue heart, and was trying to explain part of what she was feeling. And one of the young women, maybe 14 years old, high schooler, who was organizing the demonstration, got up to speak after her and said something to the effect of, I'll paraphrase that basically continuing right now for both the community and the officers to use words good cops and bad cops is becoming polarizing, because the girl, for example, was making the point that we don't know who's a good cop, as long as, going back to what Jamal was saying, as long as there's no accountability in terms of that person knew and was able to report something, that from the community standpoint, that people are feeling that they don't know who's a good cop and a bad cop. And so now I think people are starting to shut down when they're hearing the words good cops used, because it's just this label of uncertainty. So I don't have a specific question around that. I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts about how to differentiate what we're trying to talk about when we say a good cop or a bad cop, or how you guys able to communicate to us a little bit about how you're able in your daily life to be the good cop versus the bad cop. I just think people are getting lost in the words now.
And I would like to say too, is there anybody else? Because right, we have Detective Ellison, we got we got Officer Grubbs on here. Izzy, what is your actual rank too? Just officer?
Yeah, I'm just a patrolman.
Okay, all right. So Officer Izzy as well. So if there's anybody else on here who identifies as an officer, please also to chime in. It would be great. I invited several women that I knew as well. I would really love to hear from a woman officer as well. But anybody else now who can get in, okay. Okay. Officer Julian Turner, you as well. What force are you with, sir? And please go ahead and introduce yourself and say something.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Officer Julian Turner from the Boston Police Department. I've been on the department for about going on 35 years. My current role, I'm in the peer support unit, and my primary objective there is to support officers who are having adverse reactions to the stuff that they're exposed to. Right now, we're starting groups for just officers to discuss what it's like being black, wearing blue all the time. And also like to put it out to the community that if you are interacting with an officer and you believe that they may be in need of some type of social services, we're kind of like a social worker in the hospital. I do not work the front line. I haven't been on the front line in a long time. So I do know what it's like. But I just want to let the community know that the Boston Police Department does have a unit specifically to help officers deal with the personal issues that they may be having with the things that they're exposed to. Thank you.
Thank you. You were coming in and out a little bit, but I think we got the most of it. So I hope people got the gist of it. But peer support specialists inside the BPD unit for officers who are going through some things. So being that mental health is one of the main concerns, like on a lot of people's minds, right? And also too, via the veterans preference and all this other stuff too. You know, you're dealing with a lot of people who might be younger guys who are just coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. They're coming back. They're now looking at us versus them type of mentality, so on and so forth, compiled with regular everyday stress and trauma, and compiled with everyday racism and white supremacy and so on and so forth. And me as an activist, I've been privy to not only like the Pac Centurion and all these other people, but you know, the social media comments and whatnot. And I know that there are a lot of white officers from the age of rookie to retirement who espouse ideas and a mentality that is not only archaic and like very what I call Archie Bunker-esque, right? But it is scary to know that these people have guns and badges. And the way that they think is often very Neanderthal. So my point is that I'll give you a couple of good examples. The young man who was on his way after work, or whatever, it was his day off, and he's going to go get a haircut. The young guy that the officer said, "Hey, are you Kevin?" Right? And what are you doing out here at 12:30 in the afternoon? What, you don't got a job and all this type of stuff. So now that's several years ago, hasn't been answered or whatnot. The officer's name involved in that was Zachary Crossan. Are you, well, if you can't say anything, don't say anything or whatever. But Zachary Crossan. Zachary Crossan is the son of another influential officer, whatever his name was, I forget now, John Crossan or whatever. But John Crossan did he was the liaison between the BPD and Homeland Security, right? His kid, Zachary Crossan, gets into this scandal. It blows up, gets media attention, 3 million hits and all this around the world and whatnot. Zachary Crossan is, sat down, and it looks to the world like he's punished. But then he ends up leading a training on Homeland Security and this and that. So it looks like he's saved from the cushiness. Of course, we have 8,000 stories like this. You know what I mean? Of officers, once again, the officer in the case of what I said, Mark McMullen, that was Officer Chris Carr. Chris Carr is a known piece of work. Chris Carr, after this, another thing that is a national trend, not just here in BPD, but, a big incident happens, a scandal happens, and then kind of wink, wink, just to show, hey, attaboy, we're still with you. Then 6, 9 months or a year later, that same officer who was in a controversial thing is then somehow awarded. You remember the DJ Henry case? It happened there. He was made whatever, Officer of the Year or whatever. Chris Carr was later awarded. Zachary Crossan, not awarded with like a Medal of Honor or something, but then they get a cushy position or something. So on and so forth. These cases happen, and these officers are known. Sister Carla, please tell us the officers in your son's case. What are those officers' names?
Matthew Perraway and Joseph Riso, and they were both honored also 3 days or a week after killing my son.
So, this ain't what we call a coinky dink, right? I ain't never been a detective, right? But this ain't a coinky dink. This is a pattern, right? This is a pattern that not only Boston, but across the country. Officer in controversy gets awarded, he's suspended or whatever, but then he gets a cushy position or whatever. Look, so on and so forth. And sometimes it happens in regards to a black officer who takes an L and then is given some sort of cushiness to basically be quiet. Or just a regular civilian. Remember, Ted Landsmark, stabbed with the flag. Boom. Ever since then, position. Michael Cox took a hell of a behind kicking. Boom. We know other people. The firefighter who took a heck of a behind whooping. And if we do the traces of this thing, it's all dirty. Javon Lissette, you were an officer, right?
Yes, I was.
Did they do you dirty too?
I was wrongfully. You said what?
I said, did they do you dirty too?
Oh, they terminated me when I was back in the day when I was a cop. I tried to work with my superior officers and telling them the bad things that the cops were doing. When that didn't change, I started going to IAD. When that didn't change, I started going to the papers, and I went to the Banner wrote about the stop and frisk, the illegal stop and frisk. I went to the Boston Globe. The Boston Globe didn't write about it. They told my supervisors. My supervisors put me in the room. It's just what's been going on, as we all know. It's old news, But this is we are in a time where we can make a difference. And as many of these good cops we have here, we have a bunch of other good cops. but we can change the police department, what you're talking about doing, and change the whole other factors that's in the systemic racism that we've been living for decades, for centuries. But thank you for what you're doing here, Jamal. It's excellent. I put myself on mute.
All right, so listen, anybody else on here that identifies as an officer, are there any other officers on here? Because literally, once again, this is talking to the police. So it don't make no sense if we not talking to the police. So I want to make sure if there's any other officers on here, and I don't care if you're from Boston, I don't care where you from. If you a white officer, there's white people on you, a white officer. I want the opinions, because my next move from here is now I'm going to go down a list of stuff that I think that makes sense and see if I can get a consensus right here from officers right here. And then we're going to use that as the model to see if we can get a bigger consensus. I want to create what they call like a coalition of the willing. So at the end of this, I want to quote unquote like deputize everybody, right? So that everybody now, you will be in charge of going to find more people who are not crazy, right? More people who are sane and logical and understand what's going on, right? Because each one, reach one, teach one, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's do this. First of all, is there anybody else out there who's an officer who, please, would you identify yourself? I don't care if you're on the force now, if you're retired, if you like Jovan, you got a thing and they got rid of it, whatever. Anybody, law enforcement, police officer. Anybody else? All right. So, oh, you have to leave for a 7:30 meeting? Okay, I want to hit this quick then. So hold on. Okay, so police reforms. One thing, I had a conversation with Commissioner Evans at the time, and of course Gross was number 2. Commissioner Evans was like, kind of like, listen, Jamal, I feel your pain. There's a reform that I want to do, and the union, like, they beating me up on it. So he was like, I get it. His idea was so simple. So Izzy, since you're in uniform, you know how like you got your badge and y'all got your pockets like the military, right? He wanted to just put that little, the little rectangular name badge above the pocket, just like the military has, right? So yours would say, what's your last name again? Morera?
Yeah, Marrero.
Right, Marrero. So yours would say, quite simply, I Marrero. Boop. Right there, little rectangular, little brass nameplate. Evans tried to introduce that, they beat him up. Now, I know from a kid, if there is a conflict and I say to an officer, well, excuse me, officer, what's your name and your badge number? That's almost like asking them to please smack me in my forehead. Okay? That's guaranteed more problems. What are you, a smart ass? Okay. So when you run up on me, if I already see right there, I'm Marrero, I at least know that. I might not be able to see your badge number because it's super small. And a lot of cases I ever dealt with, they would be like, his badge number was 1864. I was like, damn it, that's the year that they... People were looking at the year. But anyway, if there's a clear, name thing, that's good. So let me get a consensus from the officers. You as officers, of course, you don't run the union and all that. But is that something that y'all would be against, or is that something that makes sense?
It's not something that officers are against. Most guys really don't care because, again, our badge numbers, at least BP, they're a little bigger, not as big as they should maybe, but they're a little bigger, more out there. It's not something that we're really opposed to. It's the unions make it negotiating too, and it's something that they say, all right, you want name tags? Well, then we got to negotiate that. We got to, it's a change of working conditions. So that's the hiccup in the unions. Let's get the unions on board and say, hey, listen, this is a big win for the community and a big win for law enforcement if we just got everybody's names on their chest plate, like already the supervisors already have. It's just the patrolmen that don't. I'm not opposed to it. I can't speak for my other partners on here, but I'm almost positive that they share the same attitude as I do.
So you have heard this discussion. This is not, this is a discussion. You've heard it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, real quickly, I heard Izzy mention unions plural. How many unions are there, and what are the differentiations?
They're by rank. Oh, go ahead, Gizzy. I'm sorry. Just
No,
Julie.
go ahead.
So you have the patrolmen, which is the biggest. Then you have the supervisors. Then you have the detectives.
And the Patrolmen's Association is not just the biggest, but they're the worst. They have the worst. Of course, y'all can't say that. I'm saying that as a citizen. They have the worst attitude. The rhetoric that they spout is, you know, we don't have that same problem from the detectives union or the. And I don't know if they hold the same views, but they damn near are smart enough to not espouse them, which is probably why they're detectives.
Could you repeat those numbers? It broke up a little bit, so I didn't hear all of them.
So you have the patrolmen's union, you have the detectives union, you have the superior officers union, and you have the superior detectives union, which are part of the detectives union, but they bargain for separately. So realistically, you have 4 separate unions.
And once again, the one that's the problem is the BPPA, the Boston Police Patrolmen's Association. That's the one with the Pax Centurion, which might as well be the KKK Times. That's the one who has been the problems over the years. Jim Carnell and all these people. Obama's a monkey in the cartoons. And those are the people who have been the problem, right? And of course, they don't want name badges because, you know, that would identify them as, you know, the jerks that they are. So, of course, they're against it. So to move on from that, y'all are not against. Okay, please go. Officer Turner, if you want to say something before you have to go, or please chime in.
Just thank you for the opportunity and looking forward to working with you in the future.
Please, because we don't know each other, so Izzy, Larry, whoever, please make sure that we exchange contact info because I would like to, you know, we'll all do donuts.
Well, Jamal, other than Jamal, other than Izzy,
I want some of that fruit you were delivering.
This is like a class reunion for mine. Julian Turner and Kenny are our classmates of mine. So
good.
Good night, everyone.
All right, peace, sir. Thank you, brother.
So to your just quickly your point about the name badges. No, I have no issues. I think most officers don't have it. A lot of times they're scratching their head about why the unions are fighting things. Let me just give you another example of that because, like you said, it's training, right? Several years ago, prior to this administration, Superintendent Joyce was at the academy, and it's the early stages of our electronic e-training, they call it. And I noticed in every video scenario where someone had to play the bad guy, they had selected one of the black officers to play that, as if somehow it wouldn't be real if it wasn't. And, you know, I see, you know, sometimes people don't realize the implicit biases that they're, you know, because we revert to our training, right, under stressful situations. I pointed this out to him, and he was offended that he thought I was, you know, making some racial charge. And he said he was comfortable with it. I'm like, no, what we're training officers of all colors, that this is who you identify as a bad guy.
Most of y'all have been to the shooting range and seen that target with the black man peeking out from the side. Those are like some of the most popular paper targets at the shooting range with the black predator, you know, coming out and whatnot. It is definitely a very real thing. Hey, listen, so we got that, the name badges. So that should be a no-brainer. That's no big deal, right? All right. So now let's go further. How do officers feel about a civilian review board? And my civilian review board, my idea is not just dealing with police brutality and police killing of civilians. My civilian review board would have purview over the whole thing. Not that they have a final say-so, but that they have a say-so at the table as the citizens, the civilians, the taxpayers. And so, for instance, a while back, if you guys remember, when the BPD wanted to buy, I forget what it was, I think it was like 300 AR-15s or whatever, right? The civilian review board would have been able to say, hey, guys, yeah, we don't agree with that. We as the citizenry, we don't think it's a good look for our BPD to have these, a high capacity assault rifles. We get it, but no, we say no. So my civilian review board would even be able to weigh in on things like that, be able to weigh in on training, would be able to weigh in on hiring, firing, promotions, discipline. Even something, let me give you something super silly so you see how deep it goes. Let's say that the city, overwhelmingly, the people of Boston said that, you know what? We think blue is a stupid color. We don't want your uniforms to be blue anymore. Because y'all do safety and all that, we think officers should have orange uniforms. The civilian review board model that I have in my brain would even be able to say something as silly as that. Like, we just think y'all's uniform should be orange now, or whatever, and put it to a vote or whatever. And if, an overwhelming majority of the citizens of Boston said, yeah, we think blue is a bad color, we want orange uniforms, then damn it, we would have orange uniforms. That's the type of civilian review and citizens review board I want to put, that has a complete say-so in what police does, budgets, weapons, training, the whole sheboinkin. So what do y'all think about that?
Well, I'll jump right in there and say I would totally disagree with something of that nature, because not in totality, I don't have a problem with oversight, but I don't think you just project onto people someone else's opinion. We get that honestly internally, like things are rolled out and no one's asked us, do you think this will work, right? And those of us at the bottom. So I think if you have I think you could have a conversation and say, hey, we're thinking about, giving you orange uniforms. What do you think that would do? And we would say, hey, I don't want to be a target at night that I glow in the dark. So you see, so I'm saying is that having total control, I wouldn't agree with that, just because from a safety factor.
So once again, if you heard me, that's exactly what I said. Because I don't believe, but not a total say so, but just a say so. Because so for instance, I threw that out there, as a thing. But literally, what if we said camouflage uniforms or army green or whatever? I don't know. But yes, so little things like that is exactly why it would be brought to the table. You, from your professional perspective, would point out why orange is a bad idea, or neon green or whatever. And we would say, oh, okay, I didn't think of that. I got it. Boom. And we would move on to the next idea.
Right. See, here's my take on this. I don't have a problem with oversight in what I do, right? Because I conduct myself, and I think the vast majority of officers are the same. They conduct themselves in a professional manner, right? And that if somebody wants to review what I did, it doesn't mean because it doesn't look good that it was wrong and I had no authority to do so. I think what we don't do well enough, and maybe the other officers on the line will agree, is we don't explain ahead of time to people what our practices and procedures are, right? As it pertains to unarmed assailants. So for instance, people think if they don't have a weapon in their hand and I tell you you're under arrest, that I have to sit there and box it out with you. No, I have less lethal methods to subdue you. So if I mace someone and people say, oh, you didn't have to mace them, you could have, no, that's not why it's there. So I'm saying, explain to people, but when people are at 10 and they just saw you mace someone and they don't understand our policy on unarmed assailants and less lethal force, they think it looks terrible. So I think we have to do a better job explaining up front on what it does and in what times we can engage people in certain ways.
Okay, I just want to say Officer Grubbs also just hit me and said he has to leave for a meeting as well. These people got jobs. These people are busy. So Officer Grubbs, do you have anything, final words to say, please?
You know what? Again, the conversation is good conversation, something that collectively we need to have these conversations, review boards. But I'm just going to share this personal thing, how I feel. It's like, I'm hurting. I'm really disappointed. Like, what's going on right now bothers me because of the work we've done and how now we've been set back. And because of good people that remember what we do, that judge me for my talents, what I do in the community. And again, that's also passed on to other officers who also, do the same thing, but they do it differently. It's just sort of tough. Like Larry said, it's the education piece that people don't understand. I ask a person right now, why don't you want to be a cop? It's so easy to jump on cops, but you ask a person to be a cop, they're like, oh no, that job is dangerous, this, and that. But exactly, if you can say those things, so you got to understand the duress, the pressure, the things that we go through that sometimes our parents, our families have to deal with when we leave work. So it's not just this, it's a 9-to-5 job, but it entails so much. And unless you want to do this job and be part of this job, it's easy to critique from the outside, but take the job. I mean, if you look at the makeup of the police department, individuals who take the job, we don't encourage our people of color to want to be police officers. We just don't. It's not a profession. It's not a profession that we get to. And when we look at that disparity, we look at these numbers of, when you go in the community, we don't have cops that look like us because we don't want the job. And, Larry, we can only do so much. Julian, we can only do so much as people of color. We need help too. We need more. We need the community to support. They need to come together and support what we do. I mean, because I don't think, I hate to believe that everyone who comes in this job their intentions to want to kill somebody. I mean, like Larry said, there's a progression of force that we use depending on the scenario. And I hate to believe that that people think that we come in this job and want to kill someone. That's what bothers me. So when someone calls me a murderer, police officer is a murderer, I have a problem with that because my intention is not to kill anyone. That's you're painting that brush right off because of what was done in Minnesota. That cop, that police officer, I disagree with what he did. He went beyond his badge. He went way beyond it. But to then paint that picture of us in Boston, and we just the same way, that bothers me. I can work with the community, but we gotta, like Larry said, everybody's at a 10.
But see,
we gotta bring it back. We gotta stop because we're all at 10. I guarantee it's bringing up the conversation. I get it, but it's also creating an atmosphere where the good that's been done, the progress that we've made, is now we're gonna go backwards, and we don't know what that new police department and that new community is gonna look like if we don't remember some of the things that help us get where we are.
Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much. I mean, like I said, the conversation is good. We need more talks. We need the community to come out. We need and we need that community forum. We need a big forum where we can have these conversations where people in the community need to come out and share.
And that's what I wanted to say. So look, all of y'all who've been on, and I should have said this before, Officer Turner left as well. But look, all of y'all are brave for coming on here because I know how I'm perceived. I know somebody might have told y'all not to come on here or whatever. But now what I need y'all to do is kind of be ambassadors to be like, yo, it was a regular conversation, grown up. Nobody got called, no pig. There was no F the police. And you know what I mean? It was a regular grown folk conversation, because what I'm saying too is I get it. And for what your comments that you just made, I just want you to know that nobody has ever thought that you the problem. I'm not worried about Officer Grubbs blowing my brains out. I'm not worried about Izzy beating me over the head with a nightstick, or Moose, or Nora, or Larry, or Troy Hartgrove, or my man Earl, or any. Y'all ain't the problem, by and large. And not to say that there's no bad Black and Latino cops either, but I'm just talking about the law averages. Once again, I didn't do law enforcement. I'm not a detective, but damn it, I'm pretty perceptive. And the problem has been, look, it ain't the women cops. It ain't the Asian cops. It ain't the look, when we do the demographic on who the problem is, it's white male cops. And when we pin down the age group, it's from the ages of rookie to retirement. They are dangerous from the moment they get on the force to the moment that they leave the force. And in some of the cases, after they leave, they're still dangerous in retirement too, okay? So it's a clear thing here, and not for nothing too, the work has already been done, Black historically and all this. White male aggression is the problem. The white male is not even nice to the white female, okay? So we're talking about what scholars have talked about, which is the caveman inheritance, the white man's prehistoric reasons for aggression and all this. So until we realize that it is a white male problem, like I said, how soon can they get on the force? What, 21 or whatever? From 21 to 65, that's a danger, period. It's not the black cops by and large. Yes, every now and again, like in Atlanta or wherever else, you get whatever. But by and large, this is a white male aggression problem. And they treat everybody bad. The Asian cops will tell you a story of racism. I remember the black motorcycle cop when they first opened up the Warren Street thing, and they hung a little noose in his locker or on his motorcycle or whatnot. Y'all get hell from the same people that we get hell from. It's the white male cops, period. So once again, my next point is, would y'all support an anonymous tip line for officers to report what they know to be bad Apple officers?
Jamal, I'm gonna leave, but on that,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but like I would just say, that tip line you're talking about, that's when we got to be collective. That's when that idea has to come from you,
okay,
from the court, from the community, because you got, like I said, we got to understand too. There are people that they're entitled that, like, you can't say nothing to me. So if you talk to me in a tone that's not to your satisfaction, that could create a problem. So I'm saying we need collective at the table when we're going to talk about this hotline. It can be established. It definitely can be established. But then who mans it? What is the criteria? There's just so much that has to go into it, so it's fair. So officers don't get jammed because someone if someone got a ticket. Now it goes to the review board. You got civilians like, yeah, she should have got that ticket. Now this officer's getting jammed because they did a job that they're having a bad.
No. We're gonna have scrutiny, and we're gonna check for credibility and veracity and all that.
Yeah.
And even like the officer that I ran into, I had a bad experience in Eggleston, and he treated me like a jerk and all that. And so granted, he treated me like a jerk, but I wouldn't file a report on him. He didn't beat me up. He didn't smack me up.
But Jamal, like I do, there are some who do. We
right, exactly. So we'll weed it out.
Looked at it the wrong way. I mean,
right.
Like I said, that conversation with that line, I think is a good idea, and that it has to be worked out collectively. And that's my word. That collective part where we got to bring everybody to the table and make that happen. Jamal,
so literally tonight,
Larry, Izzy, much love.
Well, look, I've always suggested, I said, look, even when we police ourselves, right, people have, they're very uncomfortable going to our internal affairs. I've always said, that there needs to be something independent. And having been the president of Mamleo, I said, hey, look, we have, I think people, when they have something set down from someone who they don't think it was part of inflicting the pain on them, it's a little easier to accept it, right? Even though, when you go into court, if the judge wasn't the one that made the arrest. The judge had nothing to do with it. Actually, you hope they're hearing it impartially for the first time. And I said, look, I was even suggesting that we had a group of retired judges in a pool, right? So that when officers, there are complaints against them, that people who have a little background and knowledge and don't know these officers personally are looking at these cases, right? But also they have some knowledge of the law, right? Because even, people say, jurors of your peers, and I think, society has changed it a lot, right? Where people go into juries now and I'm not getting off the subject, just trying to tie this in, where they now think that they're criminalists and they have all this knowledge of the law, and they don't, right? So I'd rather have someone who is a professional looking at it, who has an understanding and the education and can be impartial, right? So that if the decision is decided, and I already know, for instance, if I'm someone like Jovan, who's been outspoken, I already know what my fate is when I go into internal affairs, right? And most bosses of color feel that way, that they're not going to get a fair shake. So why are we afraid to have somebody independently looking at it is beyond me. I don't have a problem with that because, like I said, if I conduct myself in the proper way, I shouldn't be afraid of review of what I did.
All right, so listen, y'all, look, I'm about to take some of my little coins, and I'm gonna look into creating 1-800 bad apples or something like this. Okay, so we gonna make a doggone tip line. So we gonna do it.
Well, Jamal, you remember back in the day when they used to have drop a dime?
Drop a dime, exactly.
Right. People called in and reported, crimes in their neighborhood, and like I said, I don't have a problem with people.
Because so the only difference is, just like y'all got the tip line now for the murders and the shootings, and now the damn fireworks too. listen, we want to have one that is strictly, on the police thing. So, and this will, citizens too. But what I really want to see is officers giving up anonymous tips, because once again, y'all know the dirt. Officer so-and-so who showed up for roll call and had white powder all under his nose, and it wasn't a donut. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about.
But that's
The
what I'm saying.
officers' wives who show up at the barbecue and they got sunglasses on because they looking like Tina Turner under there. You know who I'm talking about.
No, absolutely. But I'm saying is that, this is where the support from the community comes, right? Because, look, humans as well. Some folks don't have that courage, right, when they know there's going to be retribution if they come forward, right? Because they also still have to go out there and work in the streets with these folks, right? And wonder, are they going to have their back?
That's why we're going to do it like y'all do the community. I get it. Anonymous.
Right, but the problem with that is, too, it's just like with the courts. You have a right to face your accuser, right? Because if somebody makes an accusation, you should be able to defend it. And that's where that's that gray area that you come into.
Okay, so let me give a couple of scenarios. So first, a couple things. Let's use somebody that we know is notoriously dirty. Danny Keeler, of legend. You know what I mean? Of legend. So everybody knows Danny Keeler was dirty. So, if tips are coming in based on a Danny Keeler, or like Christopher Carr, I know he's dirty. If they had, after the big incident with Zachary Crossan, if other people had Zachary Crossan stories, I'm all Obama ears for that. You see what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, I don't want to, I'm going to check the veracity, if not for anything else, not for the sanctity of cops or anything, but just because I love to be right so much that I don't want to come with no bogus information either. That's my reputation is on the line. I want to be dot your I's and cross your T's. So if somebody just, sends me a report, Larry Ellison, I don't like him because he's ugly, that's not going to work, right? Or like Grubb said, oh, he gave me a ticket. Once again, I've been in my own situations. The young officer that did me so wrong in the parking lot at Eggleston, was he a jerk? Absolutely. Would I file a charge against him? No, that wasn't charge worthy. That was he was just a jerk. Wasn't charge worthy.
I think it really depends on the independence of it, right? And I say this right because I know Julian is not on the line any longer. Yeah. Julian was not on the line. It's like, and Izzy will probably vouch for this, because that's why a lot of officers don't go to our stress unit, right? For fear if they have a problem that it's going to get leaked back and they're going to have their gun taken, they're going to be put on desk duty, they can't afford to make a living. So it's the same thing here, that if I report this, if it's not an independent body where they're not going to know that I was the one, because that's why people don't go to internal affairs and report some of these things, because they already know there's relationships that are formed. There's no real independence that they feel is taking place, and that it's going to get back to that person or get back out there, or then the folks are going to rally around that individual if they know the right people. And so now what you have?
So this is a big problem, and this is why you guys need to be supported. And, even, I don't want to mention her name or what have you, but, I've heard horror stories from, women and, on the force and whatnot, and what they've had to endure and so on and so forth. And there needs to be a place where y'all get to tell your stories too, because look, I'm gonna do something. I might get kicked out of the Black National Revolutionary thing. I'm gonna say Larry, Izzy, Jovan, Julian, Kenny, I love y'all, right? I don't want to see your children, your nieces, your nephews, or you jammed up in no situation, right? And so what I'm talking about is, you are not my enemy, right? You are my brother, right? And so we got to get to that. But in that, you need to be supported on your workplace. But also, too, at the end of the day, y'all have the information. Y'all really have. Y'all are the ones on the inside. So this is the inside-outside game where however we get to it, we have to figure out how the people can support the police, but the police can support the people, right? And when I say people supporting the police, because I'll really get my revolutionary card taken away, I'm talking about individual police, not the system, the police. You know what I mean? I'm talking about how are y'all individually in there who are trying to do right? How can we support you and your organizations trying to get justice? Because as we already determined, hiring, firing, discipline, promotions, we already know it's jacked up. Those are the big ones right there. But then from what we need from y'all is identifying the chinks in the armor. Okay, so for instance, I got put on to the whole thing of what I'm gonna call a loophole of the veteran preference by the black officers who showed me and walked me through it, how the veteran preference, seems like a good thing on the surface, but it actually makes things more difficult for the community, right? I didn't understand. I understood it on a basic level, but they walked me through all the nuances. We need that same type of commitment of our Black and Latino officers walking us through the corruption, the misconduct, not just the discrimination and all the things that actually benefit, and expose the parts where y'all are getting screwed over, but we need y'all's help in exposing the parts of where the people are getting screwed over, right? Once again, those bad officers if the community knows the bad officers. So in my old hood, whenever we saw that the burgundy cruiser that be going around with the jump out boys, you see that burgundy cruiser, even though the players interchange, you see that burgundy cruiser, you know it's trouble. Now we knew that, but before that, y'all know that. Y'all know the aggressive white boys. And so we want to create a list of bad cops that need to be looked into, ones that need to be checked out. Look, if they need to go talk to Turner, and I get it. No cop wants to say, yo, I'm a little stressed out. I'm feeling weird, because yes, then your job can be on the line. No different than what I be seeing on all my little shows. What cop or what Navy commander wants to say, I think I just saw a UFO? Nobody. Then they label you crazy. Same thing. But we have to take away that stigma, because there can be no you are duty sworn to uphold the law. So if you know that one of your fellow officers who was duty sworn, look, if I go on this video right now and light up some crack, y'all will be like, wow, Jamal's crazy. That was no good. But I'm not an officer. I'm just a regular citizen. So if I smoke some crack, shame on me. That's bad. It's not healthy, what have you. But if Izzy lit up some crack right now and didn't know his Zoom video was still on, that's a bigger problem, yeah? Yeah. So my point is that we have to identify officers who break the law, because they are supposed to be the upholders of the law. So if Jamal snorts some cocaine, shame on Jamal. Bad Jamal. But if Officer Sullivan is sniffing cocaine, that's a bigger problem, right? Beating his wife. If I beat my woman, that's bad. Horrible. But if an officer beats his woman, and one of their number one calls is domestic violence, the people who uphold the law and are supposed to be the enforcers of the law are also supposed to hold themselves to a higher standard. So, hey, Izzy, watch this. I'm going to confess to you. I smoke blunts, right? I smoke blunts. But if you smoke blunts, I'm looking at you a little differently, because I know why. Because I think it's morally wrong? No. But because I know that you're not supposed to smoke blunts. See? That's all. Other than that, I wouldn't care. We could smoke some blunts together, right? But I know you're not supposed to. So therefore, what I'm saying is that We have to have some sort of thing where this is like what happened in the Catholic Church or what happens with teachers or whatever. People with higher levels of responsibility. Look, if I mess with a 16-year-old girl, I'm a scumbag. I'm R. Kelly. But if I'm a teacher and I mess with a 16-year-old girl, that's worse. If I'm a preacher and I mess with a 15-year-old boy, that's worse. So that's kind of the level of integrity that I want y'all to take to the oath that y'all took. Because I'm telling y'all, I never been in a gang, but I've been in a couple of crews or whatever. If I was in a crew and I find out somebody in my crew is a child molester, y'all probably gonna find him washed up on the beach somewhere. Okay? If somebody in my crew is on drugs or whatever, we immediately know we can't trust them and you can't be in the crew. Okay? People in my community, all the biggest gangsters I know, you know what they're guilty of. They're guilty of shooting. They're guilty of selling drugs. They're guilty of guns, all that type of stuff. All the biggest gangsters I've known in the city have not amassed the record of charges that members of the BPD have. You see what I'm saying? I don't know. Okay, a couple of cases. Officer, not too long ago, maybe you're familiar with it. He was a family friend of the officer, you know. So the family, who's his friend, they thinking, you know, this is our officer buddy. He got full access. He's at the cookout. They're family friends. And he's sending dick pics to the 13-year-old daughter. Now, what happens to a guy like that? And how come it's not part of a entire thing? Izzy, you may remember, we all know the women who were messing around in the drug lab and all of the scandal that happened. Annie Dukrin and then the white woman.
Yeah.
Dukrin, but then there was also the white woman who was up in there actually smoking stuff, right? So that happened. What was her name, Carla? Oh, you're on mute, but I know y'all say it again. You're still on mute, but it was Annie Dukrin, and then it was the other crazy white lady name. But in any event, they messed up the drug scandal, right? The drug labs. Nobody talks about this. Izzy, if you pull me over in the car tonight and I got drugs on me, you confiscate it. Sonia Farak, thank you. You pull me over, you take drugs off me in my car tonight, that doesn't go straight to the drug lab. It goes to the BPD drug warehouse. And the scandal that everybody forgot about was, do we remember when 1,000 cases were tampered with because of the drugs that went missing out of the warehouse in Hyde Park? Do we remember that 11 officers were brought up on charges there? There was a whole Department of Justice federal investigation in which 11 officers were named. And as you know, Izzy, you can't go in order to get into that building. What, can I walk in there? No. You need a magnetic swipe. There's cameras all over the place, blah, blah, blah. So they identified the 11 officers who would have been that, that time. Department of Justice investigation. Nothing happened to nobody, not even a slap on the wrist. And the guy who was in the supervising officer at that time, I think he was a lieutenant at the time. I know who it was. I know his name. I just don't remember his rank. Francis Armstrong, right? And after that, he became a captain. Okay? So Captain Francis Armstrong, okay? Long story short, my point being is that I'm one of those people who got, I got the data and the list. We don't have to wonder about, has Boston shot people? I shared the link with you, shotbypolice.blackstonian.org. It's a list. Some people who had weapons, some people who didn't, some people who they say had weapons, as in the case of Carla's son, Bo Burrell Ramsey. All that's in. Did he have a weapon? Did he not have a weapon? He shot the weapon, but there's no gun residue. What are you talking about? He's magic. So there's too many cases with too many questions. Of course, the ones where people were completely unarmed are easier to deal with. Whatever. Okay, I digress. I went on a tangent. Sorry.
Sorry, can I interject one quick thing?
Please.
Sorry, I'm on my computer, which froze, so now I'm on my phone. What you're referring to with Sonia Farak is a really, really eye-opening Netflix documentary called How to Fix a Drug Scandal, and it goes beyond so much of people just not getting in trouble. I mean, for example, and I don't want to give it away because I really think everyone should watch it, but this woman in the, I guess, Amherst Drug Lab was one of the two chemists doing pretty much all of the state testing, 2004 to 2013, and is, as you'll see, getting high on the drugs from the people that have been arrested almost every single day for this many years.
She was literally doing testing.
Yes, like literally, like it was taking the sample. Yes, she was taking it. It's crazy. But what's crazy is that, for example, she's not being drug tested, and there's no cameras in this lab. And this is as of 2013. And I think there's a lot to get out of if you watch that documentary, just to interject.
And once again, unfairly, look, watch where it's unfair to the cops. Unfairly to the cops, right? All that scrutiny on the state drug lab scandal, or the state police with the payroll scandal, right? Unfairly to the Boston police, and I mean unfairly in the opposite direction, there is no scrutiny on them. The BPD has had multiple payroll scandals, right? Clocking in for hours, overtime. Oh, look, is he on payroll right now? That's a joke. That's a joke.
At the end of
I am, but I just got a call, so I actually got to excuse myself now.
Go ahead, brother.
I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to have this dialogue. I want to continue to participate in these dialogues. This is something that I'm a firm believer in community policing, and I'm a firm believer that the community needs to have a role in how we police ourselves. So absolutely.
We're going to keep doing it, Izzy. Stay in tune. Spread the word, too, and let folks know it's not no craziness. So tell Nora, tell the commissioner and all that, because I would love to have them on here next time. Go do your thing and be safe out there, brother.
Thank you. God bless you guys.
All right, peace.
you.
All right, so and not for nothing, we now really we into closing comments, because I think everybody's off. We're gonna get off this, but once again, we heard officers who said they got no problem with a name tag. They got no problem with civilian review board. I should have got to decertification. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I didn't get a consensus on that. But I would assume of a civilian review board, I would assume kind of the same, similar thing. It's all part of oversight. So my point is trying to find common ground with these folks, and then also too figuring out ways that we could support them. Because look, as an activist, if I can now come to the mayor again for the 8,000th time and say, look, but this time, look, not only do I got community support, the cops ain't even against this.
Right.
Stop being a scaredy cat. Okay? All right? And getting people like, I will say this, Commissioner Gross, who across the country, we have white commissioners from East Chucklebutt, Idaho, who are taking off their riot gear and marching with protesters and throwing up their hands and kneeling. And here we are in Boston, our first ever black police commissioner, and he talking about Blue Lives Matter. So I just want to put that out there. I have no hate or animosity against the guy. I just know that as a commissioner right now and as a black man, he should know that a statement such as that is bombastic. And even if you felt that in your heart of hearts, you should have the political savvy to know that now is probably not a good time to let that roll out your mouth. Maybe. Little free advice from me. But what do I know? So, at this point, y'all, closing comments. Anybody got anything else to say?
Jamal, what's the best way to get to connect with you or to follow what you're doing?
You could check me on match.com.
Okay. That's where I usually start for this.
Right.
So.
No, so clearly Facebook, blackstonian.org, masspolicereform.org. You know, my name is Jamal Crawford. As long as you can see the spelling on the screen.
Yep.
So as long as you got that, I'm like Cher. Just do the first name and you'll find me.
Okay.
All right. Anybody got any? Oh, and also too, when I said deputize, literally, I need y'all. So beyond just on a community meeting or whatever, like all of us need to be when it's time to sign on to a letter or, you know, make these calls to electeds and so on and so forth. We all have to do what we can we all have our own thing. Each of us, each one teach one. Each of us has at least 3 to 5 to 7 to 10 to many of us who may have email lists or we're a member of an organization or whatever. So it can exponentially, like, look, we need to be coronavirus. Just, you know what I'm saying? Just how that coronavirus spreads, we need to cough out there justice and we need to sneeze accountability on everybody. You follow what I'm saying? We need to make this thing spread and become viral in the true sense of the word. All right? So anybody else, please? Anybody else who has any further comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, open the floor up as we zap this thing out. Let's go.
Well, I want to start by thanking you for holding this because this is the first time that police officer actually listened to me or heard what was coming out of my mouth. So thank you so much.
Love you. And not for nothing, too, I have been derelict in my duty because not for nothing, you know, Carla, you can call me anytime. And I just really need to just to let you know that literally, I mean, you know me from yay high. Like, so don't, if you ever feel like somebody's not doing the work for you or not whatever, like repping for you, call me. You can literally be like, Jamal, hey, do this today. You can order me around. I'm at your service. Okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else got anything to say?
I do have a question, but I don't want to keep everybody around for my question.
Go ahead. Ask your question.
Okay, I have a couple things to say. One, Ms. Sheffield, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm so sorry that the system took your son away from you and ignored you. That's awful. And like, I've grown up here. I just graduated college in Boston, and I've never heard that story, and that pains me because like I've seen movements in Boston over the years. Like in high school, my friends would go to protests like after Mike Brown, Eric Garner, all those passings, and like we never heard about it in our own neighborhood. So I hope that, you know, Jamal follows up and like we can make his name known here in our own community. My second question is about, it's kind of a two-part thing. So I heard a lot of talk about like, you know, the first line of, like when you first call the police, that's where the problem starts because it introduces the police. And a friend of mine just like started, it's kind of past now, but they had a big email outreach for trying to get police officers out of the Boston public schools. And obviously I wish, you know, the police could have heard this, but a lot of people who are young right now are talking about like, in terms of police reform, like how can we restructure our communities so that we're not calling the police. So like if you see someone who's homeless who needs help, you're calling a specific service that will help the homeless. If you see someone who you think has a weapon, you call a service that works to de-escalate. And if you see someone who, often a lot of these calls come for like mental health reasons, people are having mental health episodes, like people who are trained in de-escalation for those experiences. And so
like
I'm
when
wondering,
someone's
like,
sleeping in their car, like Atlanta.
exactly, like there's so many calls that just don't need to be made, and police spend so much time doing things that they're not really doing much. Like so many police are just sitting in their car or waiting for the next call, and they're really trying to make something out of nothing in a lot of cases. And so I'm just wondering, like, as some, like, like just as a citizen, like if my career isn't necessarily involved in community organizing, but like in my free time, like how can we transition to like making those resources like the first line, like the first thing that we call, or like people are talking about defund the police, and I think that that makes people afraid because like it's such an extreme action, but like how do we transition those police officers to training them in de-escalation and mental health services and social work and social services, so that like a kid who's having trouble in school isn't being arrested at the end of their day at school. They're talking to a guidance counselor who can help them find assistance and mental health counseling. So that's my, sorry, that was a lot, but that was my question.
That wasn't
I
off at
think,
all. That was right. That was right in the pocket.
I think one of the things we have to do is educate the community on the word defund, because everybody thinks defund totally different perspectives. Some
Yep.
think it's taking away all of the police. Some know it's only taking away a portion of the money, redirecting it somewhere else. So we need to really educate the community on all this important stuff.
Boston,
And go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Boston City Councilor Julia Mejia has, as of late, you know, she kind of tried to redefine it, and she's talking about reallocation of funds, which, you know, makes more sense. But also, too, you also have to be very careful of some of the rhetoric that's out there, and like, for instance, what Marty and Gross been talking about, because if you really listen to them, they talking about taking the money, right, and then refunneling it back through the Boston Police. So now the Boston Police is some sort of like foundation or something that doles out the money for the services that they, you know what I mean? So now that, you know, that the BPD is saying we don't want to be in charge of like mental health calls, but you're going to redirect the 12 million, and then they're going to be in charge of determining what the mental health services are. And I don't know if y'all know, but I'm pretty sure that like Willie Gross or none of the high brass of the BPD have a PhD in social services, psychology, psychiatry, counseling, or
Any of that matter.
Right. So listen, that just doesn't make sense for that department to then, you know, it's like, it seems like they're just trying to shift funds from the left hand to the right hand, and now, you know, whatever. It's just weird. So yes, we need to be talking about that. Your points there. What is it? Maddie? Yeah, Maddie.
Yeah.
So you said you were done with school or what have you. We're gonna be looking for people. You know, people always talk about like, how can I fit in or whatnot. We are trying to create an army of people to figure out, look, in the army. So maybe you're not gonna be on the front line busting the AK-47, but maybe you can cook. Okay, so you're the cook. Maybe you know how to tend to a wound, so you're the medic. You know, whatever. You know how to hook up communication, so you're the radio person. I don't know. But what I'm saying is we have to find a way, a coalition of the willing, where everybody get in where you fit in. I don't know what you do. I need to find out what you do so that we can match wherever your expertise is to get in the slot where it's the most useful, right?
Right.
That's what we have to figure out, because right now what we're about to do is some stuff is going to be experience and expertise kind of specific, like if you're a computer person, if you know data, if you know research, that's the thing. If you're a lawyer, if you know legal, all that, boom, that's a thing. But then there's also going to be stuff that everybody could do, which is stuff like send an email, make a phone call, you know, sign on to a letter. There's stuff that, you know, so we want to make sure that we don't want no stone unturned. Anybody who wants to participate, we want to make sure that there's a place for them in this daggone revolution. You understand what I'm saying? All hands on deck. You know what I'm saying? And if you got no hands, legs too. We want it all. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else got anything else to add on before we sign off?
Yeah, I'll add real quickly, because I wanted to mention this earlier while some of the officers were on the line. one of the biggest issues that permeates every police encounter is intimidation. The importance of what a lot of these young people are doing is it takes a lot of courage to stand up and speak out against the police, against the state, against law enforcement. So just in terms of just watching young folks and being able to support them, and also making sure that they understand that there's an entire, everything seems great because there's a lot of momentum, there's a huge groundswell, there's a lot of critical mass. There's a critical mass that's building, that's really focused on turning things around. And I think I don't want folks to get too comfortable or too naive about the opposition, because they're also building the critical mass. They're also trying to figure out, okay, how can we fudge this, spin that, stop this, continue that, and it's going to be a fight, and it's going to take time. But it's important when we consider, somebody like brother Lisette, who's been a part of the process, tried to fix it from the inside, and was kicked out. So when you have folks like that who have history, who know kind of where some of the issues are, there are all those issues that he addressed, and when he was on the force, I'm sure a lot of them still exist because they never been addressed, and that coincides with the fact that a lot of these problem officers in Boston, because they've never acknowledged that they're a problem, they're still on the force. They're still working. We have murderous officers working on the Boston police force right now, who've actively on duty shot and killed people, some unarmed, and we don't know who they are. We have no idea who they are because there's no videotape. It's not, there was no riot. But I just want to tell folks, the courage is great. The timing is right. But just to understand that there's going to be a huge hill to keep climbing to start to see some progress.
And everybody has to get uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point. All of that, definitely. That's a big piece of it.
Absolutely.
Comfort zone.
Jamal, good evening.
Peace.
Just also to chime in very quickly. I've been looking at the chat and I know there was a question in terms of, what do we do with the name badges? Something as simple as that. And we have to remember that, as was already spoken, the BVPA is one of the strongest unions in the city. Now, I'm union, but they're the strongest union. And as you know, with the body cameras, the whole pushback, a lot also was from the unions. So some kind of way we need to get community members to either begin this grassroots type of movement, such as with the body cameras, in order to hold the unions accountable, not only for the pushback on little things that will even help make the officers' jobs easier in terms of how they do policing, but also hold them accountable for representing those bad cops that they know shouldn't still be on the force. So some kind of way we've also got to hold those unions to some type of accountability.
Not for nothing. Let me say this about unions. As a guy like me, I've never, held any of these jobs, so I've never been like a union guy or whatever. But I know a lot of good people, like my guy Darren Howell with SEIU and all that. So over the years, I've dealt with it politically. The dudes from the bus drivers union, and you know what I mean, all that type of thing. But I gotta tell you, in my activism life, based on my own experience, anytime I was trying to move something forward, it was the union that was a problem. So when we're talking about construction and development, who is blocking all that? The unions. And you name one. The carpenters, the jackhammerers, the metal workers, the iron, the electricity, you name a union that deals with construction and development, they are obstructionists when it comes to diversity and all that type of thing. Okay. Then we go on to education. We talking about Black history curriculum. We talking about all these type of things. Who's the biggest obstructionist in that world? The union. Okay. So again and again, I can't deal with it. So I am literally, and I was saying this to some of the younger people, because they talking about, defund the police. They think that's super revolutionary. Oh, you want to get punched in your eye? Say disband the union. Go say that. Let me see how bad you are. Go say disband the union. That's what we need to be talking about, really, is unfortunately in this case, but literally is union busting. The Patrolmen's Association union needs to be bust up and reformed and all this. And out of this basic legal logic, let's say I'm Commissioner Gross. Yes, you're in the union, but you still work for me. So if you use language like Obama is a monkey, that's still unbecoming of an officer. So I should still be able to discipline you for your language, even though you have free speech as a citizen, even though you're under the guise of the union. Like, they can't just come out and say, black people are monkeys. Like, there should be some disciplinary. And the Pac Centurion over the years has used language like towel heads. Listen, they're no friends of black people. They're no friends of gay people. They're no friends of Mexicans or any other type of Latino, anybody who's an immigrant here, unless of course you're Irish or Italian. Nobody who is Muslim. I don't care where you're from. You're all towel heads. This is the type of rhetoric that they have used over the years openly. And so I've never understood how that is not actionable disciplinary stuff. Because if they said it to me in the street, in a traffic stop, hey, you towel head, what, that would be actionable. So how is it not actionable when they're publishing it in a newsletter or on the web? So we need to definitely figure out a way to reel in the union. But also, too, we also have to recognize that these people is crazy. Literally, this is Officer Archie Bunker that we're dealing with. So if we want to have, take a bunch of time trying to civilize and talk rational to people who are irrational and talk reason to people who are not reasonable, we need to just figure out a way to blow the whole damn thing up and start from scratch, because this thing is broken. You know what I mean? That the BPPA is, and not only one of the strongest unions in the city, but in the country. And unlike New York and LA, who have so many officers, the whole the BPD only employs like 3,000 people. And out of that, about anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 are uniformed officers. Okay? We live in a city of population of 650 to 680,000, right? So how is it these people represent such a small percentage? And even if you take into account, let's say it was the entire 3,000 of them. Okay? The entire force, even though it's not the uniform. Let's say it was all 3,000 BPD employees. Let's times it by 4 for family members. So now we have 12,000. Let's double that for extended family members, girlfriends, and, affinity groups. That's 24,000 out of 650 to 680,000. How do they have this big voice? That's the part that puzzles me, just logically. It defies logic. So what we have is a very vocal, loudmouth group of old school Archie Bunker people who are still yelling, and we're still listening, as if they have any power at all. They should be checked at the city level or at the state level. And once again, under my proposal of a civilian review board, the civilian review board would basically de facto be the citizens union, who, when they say something crazy, the civilian review board would be like, you better not, to check them, and would have to be built of people who is not scared. Because I'm not scared, and I've been threatened and the whole thing. In any event, we going on. So anybody else have anything else to say, please?
Are you going to try to do this regularly, given that there is interest among police officers a little bit at least?
I think now, yes. And not for nothing, I want the big fish. I want Willie Gross to participate in this type of communication. I want top brass to participate in this type of communication. And once again, I get it. They thought that this was going to be tear down the police, F the police, and blah, blah, blah. Look, yes, we're going to talk about some difficult stuff and all that, but I'm trying to have a real grown folks, intelligent people conversation. This is not just a get you gotcha. We're trying to have a real conversation. So I would hope that now, particularly, that some officers have participated, that they would be able to go back to their colleagues and their higher ups and say, yo, Jamal's not trying to do no funny business here. It's a real conversation. And I hope that that would loosen up for other people to want to participate. And not for nothing, I want to hear from women cops, okay? Just like regular community stuff, I don't want this to be a big sword fight and all man heavy, okay? I want to hear from women officers, because not for nothing too, they know where a lot of the bodies is buried. See, the white officer done told the other black male officer, he might have called him a name or something like that, but the black female officer, that white officer propositioned her or squeezed her booty. So she gets the same racism plus with a whole bunch of another dose of an extra heaping of sexism and sexual innuendo and all this type of stuff. She gets the double scoop. Yeah. So I want to hear from you.
With Jamal too, I mean, the point you made about the citizens union, that was a great idea. If there was a way that, if anyone knows how unions are established or what the process is to initiate something like that, but if you have a citizens union that's 10, 20, 30,000 deep.
That's a vote.
So once again, my civilian review board, my model would have like a civilian review board, they're the board, but it could be a membership thing. So you could be a civilian review board, but you could represent 30,000 members who join the board.
You could do a whole community election system, like where the community elects somebody to be on the board for their community.
There you go. As long as I'm the president, I have no problems with it. But no, really, this is the type of thing. My civilian review board, I want 18-year-old Jerome to be on it, as well as the blue-haired little old lady who all she do is sit in the top floor of her window all day. You see? I mean, I really want something that is representative of the community. And once again, the board could be like a body, just like anything else. You know, you have a board, but the membership, you know, on the NAACP, there's certain people who run it. They're the leadership. There's other people who are on the committees and so on and so forth. But then there's just a membership. Right. So that when they come forth and they write a letter or whatever, they are saying, yes, we the NAACP or whatever, but we represent, you know, 4,000 members or whatever it is. We develop and we represent our own constituency. So once again, my civilian review board model would be actually something that all citizens who are interested in this type of thing could join in. They would be they would be shareholders or stakeholders, if you will, privy to the quarterly meetings. They would be able to take votes on things. They would be able to suggest agenda items and, you know, policy ideas and all of this type of thing. It would be the People's Committee, if you will.
Yep.
That's a great idea, Jamal.
I'm full of them.
Yeah, it really is.
One of his better ones.
Listen.
I'm happy to help look into it. I'm a lawyer. I do civil rights, but I'm happy to do research. So
that's what we need.
You just been sitting here being all casual all the time, and listen.
I'm trying to listen to other people.
No, we appreciate it. Send me your email and your phone number. Listen.
All right. Well, I'll send you a message through Facebook. I see.
Exactly. You're not getting off the hook. No, we
That's
you.
good. That's what I'm here.
Absolutely.
And it's like finally people like, because I'm in the ear of a lot of white people, and they finally are like, oh, is this what you've worked on your whole life? And I'm not making fun of them, because like you said about people listening right now, this is a really good opportunity where if like white people are uncomfortable enough that they're like, whoa, I'm at least going to say out loud that I don't get it. Like, people are willing to participate right now, and we got to give them outlets to participate.
I'll give you the good example, like what I talked to my mother about, like Christianity, or like going to try to make people born again, right? So if you've been, worshiping God and you saved and you strong in your faith for 30, 40 years, or right now, you're like, yo, everybody don't get it. But if you're still trying to win new people to it, you can't be a jerk to them.
Exactly.
And if you've been saved for 40 years, but they just came to it 40 minutes ago,
right?
You can't be a jerk to them.
Yeah, they're part of
because
it
if
for
you
them
do,
is
you don't increase your fold. We
And
have to increase our fold.
yeah, and they're already, this is a white people problem, but they're already scared enough to go out in front of their friends and say that they now want to help with racism or whatever. And it's like, people who have been doing this for a long time, the most important thing is like to be patient with these people who are asking the wrong questions, but try and ask a question. And it's like, where
Right.
can we point them to say, thank you for coming to the table? What do you want to learn about?
Right. Exactly. There has to be space for everybody, literally. And not for nothing, me, I generally organize with Black people first, but also Black, Latino, whatever. But also too, I can't not have a place for white people. Now there's a different mission. So for instance, for white people, the mission is go get your Uncle Freddie. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you can stop other white people from being racist and crazy, then we don't got no more work to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, this is obviously popular right now, but it's on the people who don't understand to figure out how to understand. And then there becomes this fine line, because now I think so many people are hearing like, don't ask your Black friends for help because that's offensive. And I think that there still needs to be a dialogue about how people are saying, okay, I get that it's not on you to tell me what to do or where to start, but I don't even they need to be able to ask something in order to start to get involved.
Absolutely.
It's funny you said that, because I was on a conference call yesterday with a group of people, and I heard someone saying that it is not my job to inform you on your white privilege. And I was kind of taken back, because my first thought, well, if you're not going to inform someone who's asking, how is she going to get over that hump and participate? You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I think
So
there's a fine line right there.
definitely has to be an
And
avenue.
I've thought about it before too, which is why I've done things like websites and whatnot, because see me, like I want to be able to give people basic information, like a book list or whatever, if they're really interested. But at the end of the day, if you want to get buff, you have to do the push-ups. I can't do the push-ups for you.
Well, it's
You
like
have to do them.
Teach
And-
the man how to fish, and then he can fish for the rest of his life.
Right. And look, and I'll point them to where to go to fish, and this is a good location and all that. But after that, you kind of on your own, particularly if you've grown. I have more patience for children and stuff like that. But if you've grown, I can point you there. But I'm not gonna be your life coach. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna get into bed with you and cuddle with you. Like you have to do something. So there's that. All right. So now listen, we're getting close to the point. I have to wind down now just because of the time now. But I want to make sure if anybody else here has a comment or something that they need to say, anybody else that didn't get a chance who wants to speak, anybody else, please speak before I do the wrap up. Going once, going twice.
Robert.
Jamal, I'd like to thank you for organizing this. I completely agree with what you said related to the white male culture of entitlement and violence. I did want to know, do you have any thoughts regarding issues of money being involved in issues of policing and its relation to the community.
Uh,
That there's some groups that make a huge hash about this, that are really, really focused upon differences in that, and there are other groups which are less so. So I just wanted to ask.
Well, clarify for me. What are you talking about? Organizations who are raising money around the police issue, or you're talking about the money that the police has in terms of their budget and funding and militarization and defunding and all that?
I apologize. Money was a little vague. More specifically, that the police policies related to crimes involving harm to persons versus crimes involving harm to property.
Okay, got you. Yeah, so there's a lot of that stuff, obviously, you know, that's crazy. Also, too, there's a big national thing, too, with like what they be confiscating from people, property that they confiscate from people, and obviously the money or drugs or whatever, so on and so forth. So, you know, once again, the origins of policing come from two different things. One is the catching and retrieval of slaves, right, and the overseer, the whole type of thing. And the other thing is the protection of rich people's property, right? So much of that still plays out, which is why, you know, that's how the responses to crime go. So yes, there is definitely a lot of money involved, and it's also too why richer communities tend to get a better quality of policing than poorer communities. And in richer communities, policing is more protective and serving of the property owners and keeping out of the predators, right? And in communities of color where it's already poor, policing is more of occupying, overseeing, you know, that type of thing. Even for a homeowner who's a black homeowner in an urban environment, you know, the term urban, you know what that means, is likely calling police for their, you know, for their home, and then is likely to get caught up in a situation themselves because then they don't believe you the damn homeowner, you know. So there's all types of stuff like that. Even somebody, right? Even somebody as you know, unassuming and unthreatening looking as Uncle Skippy Gates, you know, in a community like he was in, still can get that treatment on his own doorstep with his own prestige and so on and so forth. So, yes, that's a big deal. They are protectors of property, protectors of property owners, protectors of the rich, and oftentimes, I think what we're hearing lately is policing is trying to get them moving away from the warrior model and more into the protector or the guardian model. And that's what exactly happened. In our community, it's more warrior and less guardian. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of his question and your answer, because if you really look at the criminal justice system as a whole, from A to Z, the prison industrial complex, the Panthers to prison pipeline, the entire, I don't want to say existence, but in part of it, as far as America is concerned, a huge part of the existence of Black men is to feed the prison system. The prison system is a corporation. It's all about making money. For every inmate in prison, the state pays about, right now in Massachusetts, it's about $56,000 a year is what's paid to house an inmate. And unfortunately for us, Black men are 1 in 4 are at some point in their life will end up in prison. So the idea of money being involved, there are prison beds, there are budgets that are allocated to, and then at the end of the day, you have to have a product you have to have someone to fill that bed. That bed is worth money. That slot is worth money. So we're in a tough situation because everybody understands that there's this whole prison industrial complex, right? But the part that we don't pay much attention to is the fact that the police are the frontline soldiers of that complex. So they're the ones who are out on the ground. You saw the incident in Atlanta where the guy's in the drive-thru He could have easily told him to park and go on home, but there's a dollar amount that's attached to bringing him in, to booking him, to making him pay bail. Now he's in the system. Now he might be on probation. So it's all about money. It's all about money. And he would still be alive if this was a humane system that we're talking about, but we're not. So this is what we're forced to deal with. So you're looking in the right direction, but the money piece is way bigger than you would even imagine. It's in the billions and billions of dollars.
And as disgusting as it is, some of the plots and plans, this is not conspiratorial theory, this is fact. A lot of times for how they plan out how many prisons and where it's going to go and all this, they do to some of this stuff and they gather data even based off of third grade reading levels.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
They look at third grade and reading levels in the area, and based off of whatever their little algorithm is for that, they can predict how many people in the future, how much space we need for future prisons. Okay? So listen, please, we can go on. We could do a whole another couple of hours on that. So we're at the end of this thing. Once again, anybody else have anything to say before I wind this up?
Are you organizing, what are you doing for Juneteenth? I know there's something in Roxbury, and I think that's where you are.
Yeah, but that's not, no. All I'm doing for Juneteenth is I'm raising the red, black, and green flag on Boston City Hall Plaza, as we do for Black History Month, as we do for Malcolm X Day, which is May 19th, as we then do June 19th, as we do for Marcus Garvey, which is around August 17th. So that's what we're doing. We're raising the red, black, and green flag. Once again, I'm a Black nationalist and a Pan-Africanist. I do that. A lot of what these other gatherings are, these people are, I don't know what their politic is or whatever they mixed up. I'm not in Black Lives Matter. I don't rock with none of that stuff.
That's why I was asking you.
Yeah. No, I don't rock with none of that stuff. And for anybody too, any confusion, a lot of people say Black Lives Matter. Folks don't know what it means. Everybody should go to blacklivesmatter.com and go to the About Us. And you can read it. And if it's what you think it is, and you're aligned with that, then rock on. But a lot of people think it is an anti-police brutality and championing people who were killed by police brutality. And so it's not that. It's a bunch of other stuff. And if you rock with it, rock on. But for me, it's apples and oranges. I like my whiskey straight. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in any event, I don't rock with that stuff, blah, blah, blah. All right, so now let me wind it up. This conversation has been important, and I really thank God for the folks that came on, the officers who did not have to do that. They were probably warned against it, may face scrutiny or backlash just for even something as simple as having the damn conversation, okay? We didn't share no nuclear secrets, none of that. Nobody got threatened. Nobody got called a name, none of that. But there's a fear around even this conversation. So I think this conversation was important. I hope that and we continue for the future. I will try to do these now periodically, and hopefully for the next iteration of this, we'll have even more police participate. Once again, I want women officers. I want women officers to participate. And damn near, if any women officers participate, we're going to damn near shut it down and I want to hear from them for a good grip of it. You know what I mean? Because I think it's that important. The other thing is, we are going to move this to action. Once again, all of the stuff that we, have been talking about and whatnot, bringing this to Commissioner Gross, hopefully getting Gross to participate in these conversations. Nora, who is the chief of community, and I think it's community engagement or community relations, either way, y'all know what I'm talking about. Getting folks like her involved. I had hoped that Eddie Crispin from MAMLEO, the current president of MAMLEO, we heard from Larry Ellison, the past president. I was hoping that Eddie Crispin would get in, others, but thank everybody for participating. This will be it's been recorded and it'll be uploaded to YouTube and so on and so forth. So it'll be available for folks to take notes and all this. I really thank everybody for participating and being there. These conversations are only as, you know, important as like people get involved.
Right.
People have said, thank you, Jamal. No, it's not thank me, thank you. Because if I was the only square in the Brady Bunch box, right, then this don't work, right? So as wonderful as I think I am, I need more than me to make this thing work. So thank you for y'all for tuning in and participating and contributing. And thank you as well to all the police officers who contributed as well. Officer Kenny Grubbs, Officer Israel Marrero, aka Izzy, as well as Detective Larry Ellison, as well as former Officer Jovan Lissette. Oh, he's still on here. Boom. Thank you all for chiming in, and everybody else, please, the next time, let's make this bigger. We don't die, we multiply. Spread the word, get more people involved, get more officers involved as whatnot. Stay tuned. Everybody, hope you are friends or connected with me on Facebook. Let me make sure we have your emails and all of this type of thing so that we can stay in contact. Thank you all. It's been a hell of a night. We appreciate everybody. It's been great, and we're going to continue.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Well done, well done. Good job.
All right. God bless y'all. Peace.
Bye.
Thank you.